Channel Story on Friday is made with some wonderful stories of Bengali literature. Professor Shonku and the Egyptian Mummy is a story from the Bengali comic series Professor Shanku, authored by Satyajit Roy. The main character of Professor Shonku's stories is notably inspired by Professor Satyajit Roy himself, who was not only a skilled storyteller, but also well-versed as a writer of science fiction. His stories intertwine social, political, and scientific themes. The first appearance of Professor Shanku was in the Sandesh magazine with the story, A Diary of a Space Traveler. From the very beginning, the Shanku stories captivated the minds of young readers. Professor Shonku and the Egyptian Mummy was published on Sandesh magazine in the year of 1963. This is the second adventure of Professor Shanku. In this story, British archaeologist James Somerton finds more than 30 mummies in the Egyptian city Bubastis. Professor Shanku goes to Egypt and joins Somerton's team. At the same time, an Egyptian person threatens Shanku and asks to stop the excavation. Shanku ignores the warning. Somerton gifts Shanku one of the mummies he found in the excavation. Professor Shanku brings that to Giridi, India. The Egyptian person who warned Professor Shanku chases him to Giridi and claims himself as a descendant of the mummified person. I took this story from the book Shanku's collection. Professor Shanku, Dr. James Somerton and local man in the lead role. Starting, Professor Shanku and the Egyptian Mummy. I am writing in my diary in room number 5 of the Imperial Hotel on Port Said. Now it's 11:30 at night. Here, it feels like people stay awake, walk on the streets, and make noise for much of the night. Through the open window on my eastern side, I can hear the city's sounds entering. Until 10 p.m., there was a mild warmth in the air. After that, a chilly breeze started blowing from the direction of the Suez Canal. I don't know how worthwhile my journey to Egypt will be, but considering the events of today, there's a little sense of hope. I had wanted to come here like this for a long time. I feel that any scientist from any country should visit Egypt. What they achieved in science 5,000 years ago is truly astonishing to think about. There's much to explore in this regard: their chemistry, their mathematics, their medical science, everything gained incredible achievements during that ancient era. What's most astonishing is the matter of their mummies. They preserved the dead body in such an extraordinary chemical way, wrapping it in bandages and placing it in a wooden coffin, that even after 5,000 years, when the bandages were unwrapped, it was found that the dead body remained far away, without any signs of decay. The mystery behind this remains unsolved by any scientific revelation. I had come across news about Dr. James Somerton, a British theoretical physicist who is currently conducting excavation in the area of the present-day Egyptian oasis. From the very beginning, the purpose was to engage in a conversation with this team. I had read all the books about Egypt written by Somerton. After 3 years of excavation, they discovered the incredible sarcophagus of the 4th dynasty's King Kairatop. Somerton himself made this astonishing discovery. Who knew that it would have such an amazing conversation with this Somerton, within a few hours of entering Egypt? In the morning, as I came to the hotel and got my room arranged, I went to the manager to find out about Somerton's contact. Upon hearing my respectful inquiry, he looked at me from the newspaper and said,
"Have you also come for the same reason?"
I didn't quite like his sarcastic tone. So, I asked, why do you say that? The manager replied,
Well, if that's the case, then I consider it my duty to warn you. Otherwise, what will happen to you will be just like what happened to Somerton.
What happened to Somerton?
He received an appropriate punishment, nothing else. He gets adversity to the unauthorized access into ancient tombs by digging the soil. Of course, he shouldn't have to suffer for long. Only few people can survive from the scarab beetle's bite.
I have read about the scarab beetle in books. Scarab beetles, revered as a deity in ancient times by the Egyptians. I managed to find out a bit more by asking questions. Yesterday, while working on the excavation in Bubastis, Somerton suddenly let out a scream or a shriek. His assistants rushed over and found Somerton gripping his right leg in pain, his face distorted in agony. He was exclaiming,
"That beetle! That beetle!"
Of course, they couldn't find the beetle. Somerton was immediately sent to the hospital in Port Said. His condition may be serious. Without delaying after receiving the news, I rushed to the hospital. I brought along my prepared medicine, mercurial. How many people in my country who have been bitten by crabs, snake, and have been cured by taking a single dose of this medicine? When I reach an hospital, I saw his condition is not good, he is in critical condition. Even in this condition, he is lying peacefully, resting. Occasionally, a twitch of pain crosses his brow, and his distorted face displays unbearable agony. I introduced myself as a reader and admirer of his and entered his house to gain his insight. But I was surprised to find out that the gentleman had identified me by name. Not only that, he, in his painful state, whispered to me in a weakened voice that he had read many of my science books, and the fundamental research-based book I had written about the scientific basis of ghosts and the supernatural, and that it might be one of his favorite books. Probably because of this trust in me, he had no objection to taking my medicine. When I returned to the hotel it was around 11 o'clock. A little before 3 in the afternoon, I got the news that Somerton is feeling quite well. There's no fever, the bluish hue on his body has faded, and the pain has lessened significantly. I had no doubt that by tomorrow morning, he will be completely well. I will have to meet Somerton tomorrow morning, and offer to accompany him for a few days. September 8, 12 at night. I went to the hospital early this morning. Somerton is absolutely well. The scarab beetle's mark on his leg has miraculously disappeared in just one day after applying my medicine. I was astonished by the effectiveness of my medicine. I didn't tell Somerton about the unique combination of extraordinary ingredients in the medicine. Especially, I refrained from telling him about the beetle's secretions. Perhaps if I had mentioned it, he might have considered me insane. Regardless, Somerton's gratitude towards me is beyond measure. I don't have to ask about joining the excavation, he had mentioned it himself. I was immediately convinced. I also discussed the matter of the mummy with him in particular detail. It's not just that, his belief in the potential adverse effects of disturbing the ancient tomb and handling the artifacts inside, and how it might affect anyone involved, including Somerton or his team, is evident. He considers that the beetle that bit him is the same scarab beetle that the Egyptians worshipped. He mentioned that there's a sculpture resembling this scarab beetle carved on the walls of the temple where Somerton is working. The Egyptians used to worship many animals, birds, and other things, believing them to be incarnations of deities. I knew this information. I asked Somerton, has an excavation led to the discovery of a cat's tomb in any specific place? Somerton said,
Oh, that's right, it's in this Bubastis, the very place where I'm working now. Of course, it's been discovered for quite some time. There are the tombs of hundreds of cats in that house. The mummification of the cat has been done in the same way as humans. The cat was considered an incarnation of the goddess Batet.
I've decided that when I have the time and opportunity, I'll visit this amazing burial chamber. Cats are my favorite animals. I've brought my beloved Newton home. When I think about him, my heart aches. When I was returning to the hotel after meeting Somerton, the sun was shining brightly. In front of the hotel, a local person approached me. He was tall, with a dark complexion, wearing tattered clothes, had unkempt hair, and sharp relentless eyes. The man advanced towards me, raising his right hand in a very assertive manner, placing it on my shoulder. Then, with a stern and unwavering gaze at me, he said in broken English,
"You seem to be an Indian, but why are you mingling with these white barbarians? Why do you care so much about all the ancient things in our country?"
I responded with a hint of boredom. Why, what's wrong with that? Is it disrespectful to bother with ancient things? You know, I have come to this country with great respect for ancient Egyptian civilization. His eyes seemed to blaze even more. He still had his right hand on my shoulder. With a squeeze of that hand he said,
"Respect is one thing, but digging up graves and disturbing the souls of the dead in holy burial chambers is another thing entirely. Do you know where Mr. Somerton is working?"
"Yes, I know. He is at a burial chamber from the 4th dynasty of Bubastis."
"Do you know that there's the tomb of my ancestors there?"
I laughed and said, "You seem to keep a close watch on your 14 generations of ancestors." He seemed even more irritated. With his right hand on my shoulder, he gave me a little shake and said,
"Whether I keep it or not, if you dare to wander around that temple, you'll meet your doom."
Saying this, the man left me and went towards the street and joined the crowd. I gasped and went to my room. Somerton will go back to his work tomorrow, and I will go with him. It is better to keep things organized at this time. I felt a sense of excitement deep down. This is exactly what happened when exploring prehistoric relics in the area of Nilgiris. Cat's grave, it makes me feel excitement even if I think about it. Tomorrow, I will have to mention the amusing behavior of the crazy guy to Somerton. I feel that this matter isn't anything more. Often, in these ancient temples, valuable stone sculptures are frequently found in the corners. These local people are well aware of this, and they may think that by threatening, by fearing the curse, they can extort some of these stone objects from innocent archaeologists. However, if the person crosses the line, I have made up that I will use my snuff gun on him. I have brought my snuff gun. If I could hit in his nose, he'll be suffering from an unrelenting sneeze for 2 days. Then I will see if the man comes to bother me again. September 10th. We arrived at Bubastis yesterday morning. I went down with Somerton to see the newly excavated 4,000-year-old tomb yesterday afternoon. It is difficult to describe what a strange feeling this is. With a small torch, you have to enter a narrower corridor, passing through a narrower passage to reach the chamber. Somerton speculates that it is the tomb of a high-ranking royal official. A large wooden coffin in the middle of a hall, and small chambers surrounding the room, each containing a coffin inside. It contains the corpses of the counselors of this distinguished person. The ancient Egyptians believed that the soul of the deceased, like a living person, needs various things for their daily journey. So next to the coffin, I saw food utensils, food, clothes, belongings, sports equipment, everything was kept. Somerton opened a coffin, and showed me the mummy inside. Both hands were crossed, over the chest. Wrapped in bandages, from head to toe. As soon as the coffin was opened, a strong odor entered my nose. I was amazed to see the dead body. How many books have I read about these mummies? On top of mummy's chest, what the Egyptians wrote, in hieroglyphic language, on 4,000-year-old papyrus paper. I don't know this language. Somerton certainly knows it. But it's not as easy to decipher as modern languages. It takes time to understand this language. Somerton said.
The identification of the deceased is in those hieroglyphics. Not just the name. When and how the death occurred is also written.
After exploring the tomb all day, on the way back to the camp in the evening, Somerton asked me.
You think ghosts or miracles have a scientific basis, don't you? At least that's what it seems from reading your book.
I said, that's true. However, I also accept that, while science has advanced in many directions, there are still many mysteries that have not been unraveled. For example, there is disagreement among scientists about why humans dream. But I believe that within 25 or 50 years, scientists will uncover the reasons behind all the world's mysteries. Somerton thought for a moment and said,
In these ancient tombs we're entering, many believe that the souls of the deceased might be dissatisfied with us. They might even be cursing us for our intrusion. Maybe one day, we'll have to face the consequences of this sin.
Hearing those words, I chuckled because this remembered me about the crazy guy of that day. Even Somerton chuckled when he remembered the man's words and said,
Oh, that guy has been after me since day one. He also threatened me. If he gets some reward, he won't bother anymore.
I said, if that does the trick, then why not? Somerton rubbed his forehead and said,
I don't want to spend money on these scammers. It only increases their greed. Those who will come here for all these tasks in the future, we have to think about those archaeologists. It's better to ignore it altogether. After a few days of annoyance, when they see there is no hope of profit, they will stop bothering.
I returned to the tent. After drinking water, I sat outside with a canvas deck chair. I looked towards the west, and saw the Giza pyramid standing with its deep, dusky face in front of the setting sun. Even now, we haven't fully understood how this pyramid was constructed in ancient times. To the north of the tent, there was a line of date palm trees. On the head of one of them, I saw a trio of vultures perched together. In ancient times they considered vultures to be an incarnation of God. These ancient Egyptians were truly astonishing. September 12th. Today, Somerton proposed something to me that took me aback, and upon hearing his proposal, I understood deeply that he is grateful to me for saving him from the clutches of death. While returning to the tent in the evening, after spending the whole day looking at the graves of Bubastis's cats, Somerton, puffing out his pipe, and suddenly said,
Shanku, the thought of what I can do in return for what you have done for me, has been on my mind for days. Today, an idea has come to my mind. Now I wonder whether this idea pleases you or not.
After saying that, Somerton paused a bit to catch his breath. It is understandable that scarab beetle's bite has made him quite weak inside. After walking a bit further, Somerton said,
You want to do research on mummy, right? Suppose one of my discovered mummies could be given to you. Would you be happy or unhappy?
I was so surprised to hear the proposal, that I couldn't think at first what I will say. The idea that I could bring back my own mummy for my experiment seemed like a dream from me. Without giving it much thought, I said, "If I can get away with a mummy, I think my expedition will be entirely worthwhile, and if that happens, I will be eternally grateful to you." Somerton smiled and said,
What do you prefer? A cat or a human?
There was no difference between cats and humans for my research, but thinking of my beloved innocent Newton, I didn't want to take the mummy of a cat along. Newton is always roaming around my laboratory. It is hard to imagine what kind of enthusiasm it might have when he suddenly saw the mummy of a 4,000-year-old cat lying there. Therefore, I replied, would prefer a human. Somerton replied,
Fair enough, but take a good thing when you take it. Near the tomb of the cat in Bubastis, I have discovered another tomb, close to a human cemetery, where about 30 mummies are preserved. The type of people they were still unknown. I believe there is a mystery related to their deaths. Even in the hieroglyphics written on their coffins with papyrus, there's something special, one that I haven't been able to decipher yet. I will provide you with one of these 30 coffins. However, I will transcribe the writing from it myself. Afterward, upon returning home, I will send it to you for deciphering. You can continue your research, and let me know your findings. If you manage to unravel the chemical mystery of these mummies, you might even win a Nobel Prize one day.
I have no further need to stay in Egypt. My wish would be fulfilled, if I could put the coffin that Somerton had given me in a packing case, and take it on ship and return home. After that, there is endless time for research. Indeed, there's no comparison to Somerton's generosity. In fact, even though scientists are from different countries, they somehow feel a kinship towards each other. I had 3 days of conversation with Somerton, but it seemed as I have known him for a long time. September 15th. This morning, I returned to the port said. As soon as I got back, an unusual incident occurred. Just near my hotel, while coming out onto the street after buying a leather portfolio from a big shop, I collided with that tall, disheveled man. Not only that, but he also came forward and immediately grabbed my shirt collar. I'm totally freaked out. To be honest, in the excitement of the last few days, I had forgotten about the man. In fact, I hadn't even thought about any danger like this, so I wasn't armed with any weapon. The man, with bloodshot eyes, leaned over my face, and in broken English said,
I warned you, but you didn't listen to me. You took away the mummy of my forefather to your own country. You can't even imagine the punishment you're going to face for this. I will personally take revenge. I will extract compensation for this crime with my own hands.
Saying this, he tightened his grip on my collar, almost choking me. Just when a policeman ran over, and pushed him away forcefully. Some passers-by who had witnessed the scene, came closer to see if I was okay. They showed sympathy for me and said, "That man is crazy. He has gone to jail many a times before, it arises again when it is freed." Even the police told me not to worry. They said that, proper action would be taken against that man by punishing him moderately. I had no reason for my own anxiety. Just 4 days later, I have booked a passage on a ship bound for India. Accompanying me, will be the ancient Egyptian mummy given to me by Somerton, dating back to around 4000 BC. Returning home, after unwrap the bandages will start research on him. I have to unravel the chemical mystery of Mummy. My ship is sailing over the Red Sea. The sea is rough, as usual, but it doesn't cause any discomfort to my body. Just makes it a bit challenging to write with a steady hand. The coffin is securely packed in the cargo hold of the ship. My mind is fixated on it. When Somerton came to the port to bid me farewell, I suggested to him that when he reads the inscription on the coffin, he should inform me. I also told him that when he gets free, he should come to Girity as my guest, and spend some time with me. As the ship was leaving, I caught a glimpse of a tall head in the crowd facing towards the dock. Through my binoculars, I saw that the crazy man was glaring at me. The cruel, sinister smile in his eyes and at the corner of his lips is something I will never forget. He didn't seem to comprehend the police threat. The waves of the Red Sea have increased. Now, I must stop writing. September 27th. Today morning, I reached Girity. My servant Prahlad first noticed that my skin had darkened several inches after being burnt by the sun in the desert of Bubastis. The mirror in my room confirmed the truth of that assumption. Newton came over and began rubbing his ass on my pants. And the familiar meow sound on the mouth. Fortunately, I did not bring the dead body of the cat with me. Otherwise, Newton could not tolerate that at all. The coffin occupies a significant space in the laboratory. I couldn't wait anymore, so I took the coffin out of the packing case in the afternoon. I have carefully observed the coffin today. Its upper part and the cover are beautifully crafted. One can understand the Egyptians were skilled in wood carving from this. Opening the coffin's lid, another box emerged. It's shaped like a reclining person. So, what lies inside is a simple replica of the deceased's body. The eyes, nose, mouth, all are there, and the entire body is adorned with colorful hieroglyphics. After opening this second box, I caught that familiar smell and saw the bandaged corpse. Like all the other mummies I have seen, he had both hands crossed on his chest, wrapped in bandages from head to toe. So, I couldn't discern any idea what the man looked like. But there is no doubt that the man is tall. About a hand taller than me. That is, well over 6 feet. I left the task of unbandaging for tomorrow. I am tired today. Except this, I need to keep my research equipment neat and tidy. Some of the sand from Ushri has accumulated in them. I'll inform Abhinash Babu tomorrow, and bring him to show the box's content. It is a whim of his to belittle my scientific research. When he sees it, it feels that he will not bother me for a few days. A little while ago, when I heard a knock at the door, I thought it was Avinash Babu and sent Prahlad to see him. He came back and said no one was there. Then it seems that there was a sound of storm. It has been raining here for the last few days. September 29th. After what happened yesterday, I didn't have the capacity to write in my diary anymore. So, this morning, I'm attempting to write about yesterday's incident on a chilled mind. I wrote about the knocking on the door in the evening in the day before yesterday, thinking that it sounded like the storm. The storm stops around 11 at night. My sleep also comes shortly thereafter. I don't know what time it is, the sound of the door shattered my sleep once more. Prahlad is sleeping outside the door of my room. Everything seems fine with him, except that his sleep is unusually deep. The sound of the push didn't disturb his sleep. Curious, I took my torch, and went to see who it could be at such a late night. I went downstairs, opened the main door, but I couldn't see anyone. I looked around with the light of the torch. There's no one anywhere. Suddenly, I lowered my hand and aimed the light right in front of the door on the doorstep, and there, I see a wet footprint on the doorstep. And the size of that footprint makes my heart race. Who can have such a big footprint in the city of Girity? Whoever it was, he must have been in a hurry. And once he has come and gone, it's to be hoped that he won't return so soon. I closed the door and returned to my drawing room. On my way, what I felt, I entered the laboratory. I didn't notice any changes or anything unusual. The coffin is where it was, the lid is still closed. Leaving the laboratory, I see Newton standing in one corner of the drawing room, his fur standing on end, and his whole body looking a little haggard. Perhaps he's also awakened by the sound of the door's push, and thinking that such an incident at this time of night in my house is very unusual, he too seems unsettled. I carried Newton into my bedroom. Then I closed the door of the room, and laid Newton on the carpet on the floor next to the bed, and I too lay down on the bed. Next day, meaning today, I woke up early in the morning, had coffee, went to the laboratory, and prepared my research equipment for work. For an hour or so, I cleaned up my equipment. Test tubes, retorts, jars, bottles, flasks, all of them were covered in dust. Then I told Prahlad, as long as I'm in the laboratory, no one should be allowed to enter the house, and he himself should not enter without giving me a warning. Then I brought a table with tools beside the coffin, and a chair for myself to sit on and began my work. Among the Egyptian materials used to preserve a body, natron, caustic soda, bitumen, balsam, and honey are known. But aside from this, the Egyptians uses something else, no trace of which has been found. I need to examine the unknown elements, and analyze them thoroughly. I carefully unwrapped the bandage from the box and the coffin. I looked at the mummy once more. While there were no deformities in the body, the bandages had slightly deteriorated over the 4,000 years. I had to carefully remove them with tweezers. I put on gloves and face mask and started my work. From the top of the head, the bandage began to peel off, first exposing the forehead, and then the rest of the face. The forehead is not too wide. The eyes were sunk in. The nose is quite high. What is that on the right cheek? 3 deep and long scars. The skin of the cheek is cut as if by a sharp object. Is this scar possible in the sword fight? But why would it be 3? And why will the spots go parallel? As I unwrapped the bandage downwards to the throat, I felt like the face seemed familiar. These eyes, this nose, where have I seen this face before? Remembered the astonishing similarity of this face with that madman from the port said. But it's not such an unnatural thing. Among us Bengalis, we often notice such similarities in our faces. The difference between the Egyptians' faces is much less compared to ours. Such faces are found even today on the statues of ancient Egyptians, and are also seen in the modern-day crowd on the streets of Port Said. So, there's nothing to be surprised about. Recognizing such a face among Egyptians is quite typical. In my thoughts, I remembered what that madman had said, "You've taken away my ancestor's dead body." I think I gave a little too much attention to his words, so now a priceless doubt was emerging in my mind. Ignoring the memory of Port Said, I proceeded to untie the bandages. The bandage around the neck felt truly brittle, as if it had decayed. Each pull of the bandage seemed to break it into pieces. But it's hard to be impatient about this, so I started moving my hands very slowly and calmly. I completely lost track of time at work. When I reached the bottom of the rib, I realized it was evening, and I needed to light the lamp. I was going to get up from the chair. In such moments, when I turned towards the window, I felt a tingling in my whole body. I saw that madman of Port Said is staring inside the house, placing the face against the windowpane. His eyes and expressions were now 100 times more aggressive and frenzied than before. He is looking once at me and once at the coffin. I reached for the switch on the wall, thinking that if I turn on the light in the room, maybe the sense of panic will be reduced a little. At that time, the man jumped and came right into my laboratory, breaking the window shutter with a strong blow. Then his demonic gaze focused on me, and he started moving towards me with both hands extended. I cannot vividly describe the subsequent incident. Everything happened in a quick moment. The man was going to pounce on me, and at that moment Newton came out of nowhere with a loud thump, and jumped straight on the man's face. Then came the gory scene. With a vicious scratch on the madman's right cheek, Newton completely knocked him out. Newton's rage was entirely unfamiliar to me. The most astonishing part is that, after the man fell to the ground with a bloody cheek, he couldn't get up anymore. I could not find any other reason for his death, except cardiac arrest from shock. As the madman took his final breath, Newton left the laboratory and headed out like a conscious child. On the other hand, I looked at the coffin with a sensation of unbearable stench, and saw signs of decay on the body that was 4,000 years old. With the madman's death, the spell of the Egyptian magic had been broken. Without any hesitation, I sealed the coffin and sprayed a mixture of various fragrant flowers' essence around the laboratory. The mystery of mummy remained a mystery. The ancient Egyptian scientist still remains a step above the best Indian scientists in this regard. Local police were informed, and they arrived within moments. Inspector Judin Samadar was very kind to me. He looked at me with a raised eyebrow and said,
"You are not responsible for that corpse inside the wooden box. But you have to be a little hesitant about investigating the death of the one who is lying on the ground."
I responded, "Sure. For now, if you could kindly remove this ancient and recent body from here." October 7th. Today, I received a letter from Somerton. He wrote,
"Dear Professor Shanku, I hope you are making good progress towards the Nobel Prize. I have retrieved the papyraceous relic from the coffin. It contains information about the deceased person. It is said that in his lifetime, he insulted the goddess Batet and was punished with life imprisonment. However, before undergoing this punishment, he mysteriously met his death after being scratched by a cat. In other words, the goddess herself took revenge for her humiliation by assuming his form. Isn't it astonishing? You can think about the scientific basis of this as well. Let me know how your work is progressing. I have returned to England, and have been promoting the greatness of the beetle greatness. Yours, James Somerton."
As I was about to fold Somerton's letter, and put it inside the envelope, I felt Newton's neck rub against my pants. Filled with affection, I lifted him in my arms and asked, "Merger, did you also incarnate as goddess Batet?" Newton replied, You are listening Professor Shonku and the Egyptian Mummy, written by Satyajit Roy. Story on Friday, thanks all the listeners. See you again with another story next week. Till then, stay healthy, stay well.